Guys, Bachata Rockstar here, and we are doing a card review for the newest expansion, High Alert. We're going to go through every card, I'm going to talk about them, I'm going to give them a score, and hope you guys like them, and I hope you find this educational. Alright, let's take a look at card number one. It's going to be the Fighter Pod. Blob ship, 1 trade, 3 damage, allies for 2 trade, double allies for 3 damage. Excellent card. Really nice. It's weighted, so, it doesn't draw itself. But potentially can combo for 6 damage, which is really nice. The ability to combo to get 2 trade is really good. So, this card is similar to the Stinger, whereas the Stinger would scrap itself to give you 1 trade. This doesn't scrap itself, but it gives you 2 trade. So I think it's equivalent to that card, but I like the idea of being able to scrap a Stinger out. But very often I end up just keeping the Stinger because it's potentially 6 damage. The hard part about this card is it's only going to be good in the late game with a deck that has a lot of blobs in it. So you are going to want to lean in to blob colors. But other than that, I think it's a very good card. It's a nice starter card. 3 damage, nothing to snipe at. And again, you can potentially get 2 trade too. Yeah, it's a good card. It does what blobs want to do. I give it an 8 out of 10. It's a solid buy. It's worth buying. Let's move on to the Port Cutter. More cutters. You guys know how much I love cutters, so obviously I love this card, right? Maybe? I don't know. Let's dive into it a little more. Trade Federation, blue card. 2 trade. It gives you 2 trade and 2 damage. Excellent. Combos to get 3 healing, but pay 1 less to acquire this card for each blue card you have in play. So potentially, this is a free card. It's kind of nice. By the time you have the ability to drop 2 blue cards and get this down to 0, you may not need it anymore. So I'm not necessarily looking at this card to try to get it cheaper. But if I do get it cheaper, that's great. Save some money, never a problem. But I like to weigh cards like this on their merits, right? On their face value. Because that's more likely is going to be the scenario that you get this card in. 2 trade, 2 damage, solid card. I like it. I actually like it better than the Frontier Runner card that's 2 trade, 2 heal. I'd much rather have the damage than have the healing. I get the trade. If it combos, I get the healing, which is awesome. But notice, when it combos for less damage than the regular cutter, and it also combos for less healing than the regular cutter. So I think this card is much worse than actual cutter, and I think they did that because you can potentially get it for free. But that doesn't justify the sort of lack of power with this card. It's still a good card. It's still a good buy. 2 trade to pick up a card that gives you 2 trade and 2 damage. Like, you don't lose anything by picking this card up. Like, one of the main drawbacks about picking up a card that only gives you trade is you get no damage, you get no healing, you get no other additional benefits aside from the trade. And so what's nice about this card is it gives you a little bit of everything. And cards that give you a little bit of everything are typically really good cards. So I like this card. I give it an 8 out of 10. It's good. It's worth buying. It's perfectly costed. But I would like to see a little more bang for my buck. Scavenger Bot. 2 trade, machine called red card. 1 trade, and you may scrap a card in your hand or discard pile. Combos for 3. Double combos to draw a card. Ooh, fancy! So, this card is really equivalent to... I'm drawing a blank on the card right now. But it's 2 trade. It gives you 1 trade, scraps hand or discard, and then you can scrap it to deal 3 damage, and it combos to draw a card. So the problem with this card, and the thing that I don't like, is double ally to draw a card. I love card draw. And so potentially this card could, be weightless in theory. But a double ally to draw a card, ugh, that's kind of hard to pull off. Um, so I'm not saying I discount the card draw, but it's not going to be sort of the main attraction of this card. The fact that it scraps in hand or discard pile is really big. And it combos to deal 3 damage, I mean, that's big too, you know? But the little, is it repair bot? Repair mech? I don't know. The one in vanilla that gives you 1 trade and scraps a card in discard pile and then combos to deal 2 damage. Like, this card's not that much better than it. And you have to kind of jump through a lot of hoops to actually make this card good. So this card is appropriately costed, but it's a little expensive given what you get out of it without comboing. And you'll notice this will be a theme throughout the set, is just you gotta fucking combo everything to get the full potential out of it. And so I think that as actually a drawback in this particular card. Whereas in some of the other cards it wasn't so bad because they still did really good stuff. And I'm not saying this card doesn't do good stuff, it just, the sheer fact that you have to jump through all these hoops to actually get the stuff that you would want this card for, that makes it not quite as good. So I'm going to give this a 7 out of 10. I think it's a little underpowered. Cargo Barge. 3 trade. Yellow Star Empire card. Gives you 3 trade. Combos, target opponent discards a card. Scrap it to draw a card. Pay 1 less to acquire this card for each Star Empire card you have in play. So potentially this could cost like 2, maybe even 1. 3 trade is always nice. Target opponent discarding a card is nice. Scrapping to draw a card, really nice. You know how much I love cards that scrap themselves. So I think it's a pretty good card. It costing 1 less to acquire this card for each Star Emperor card you have in play. I don't even know if that's really relevant. I mean, 3 trade to get 3 trade, it's fine with me. Scraps itself, fine with me. Like, this is the kind of card you buy and just get rid of it. You just buy something good, you upgrade, you toss it. Like, solid card. And if you pick it up for less than 3 trade, I guess that's better. But I don't know. These sort of like discounted cards, unless they're like 6 or above, I don't really care if they get discounted. Like paying 2 or 1 for this instead of 3, like, yeah, maybe you save a little trade and are able to do something else, and it makes your decisions a little bit better, but I don't really think that affects the game that much. So I think it's a good card. It's a solid card. If you buy it for 3 and flip it for 3 and, maybe force your opponent to discard a card, but maybe just flip it into something else and draw a card off it, fucking solid, man. It does all the stuff you want. 8 out of 10. All these cards, pretty good. Pretty solid. Nothing terrible. Nothing where you just, like, turn your nose up at it. Park Station. 4 trade. Star Empire base. Gives you 2 trade. Combos to deal 3 damage. Has 4 HP as a regular base. Pay 1 less to acquire this card for each Star Empire card you have in play. So this is kind of nice, right? At 4 trade, getting a 1 or 2 trade discount becomes significant. At 4 trade, often that's kind of an inflection point where you're typically only able to buy that 1 card. If something is 3 trade or below, it's very possible that you're able to buy 2 cards in 1 turn. So getting a discount on this card and then potentially allowing yourself to buy another 2-drop or 3-drop because of that is pretty darn good. 2 trade, not bad. Face protection would be better. But comboing to get 3 damage, that's pretty good too. It's not bad. It is a base. I wish it did a little more. I feel like it's just kind of, there are other 4-cost cards that do better. Right? Command post? Command something? Whatever. The 4-cost one that blocks for 4, is an outpost that blocks for 4, gives you 2 trade, and then 2 damage for every Star Empire card that you play. Like, I think that card is actually better just because of the face protection and the potential for more damage. But getting 3 damage here is significant because in order for the other card that I just mentioned to do better than this card, you'd have to play 2 Star Empire cards. And you'd have to play them first. Whereas this card can come down later and combo. So that's kind of nice. Um, I just, I wish it had face protection. I wish it did a little more damage, but getting 2 trade back is pretty solid. Your opponent is gonna have to kill this, and something like a central station, gives you 2 trade and then does all the shenanigans with the bases and stuff. This is a nice combo with that card as well. So it's a good card. It's a solid card. Like I said, a little underpowered. I give it a 7. It's fine. Um, yeah, let's move on. Operations Center. Blue card, 4 trade. Gives you 2 trade. Combos to heal for 2. Double combos to draw a card. Interesting. I like this. It's a little cheap base. It gives you trade, potentially gives you healing. So, if you remember, the storage silo had the reverse of this. 2 healing, combos to give you 2 trade. Whereas this gives you the 2 trade right away. So if you get this in storage silo, heal for 4, you get 4 trade, fucking great. And then you got 2 little bases to sit out there. It's not an outpost, so hopefully this is something you kind of sit behind a blue base that blocks something like an ion station. Be kind of good. It's not that hard to pick up 2 blues. And it's not that hard to pick up 2 blues together. Blues are actually one of the better cards to like combo with each other, right? Because you lengthen the game. And then it makes it easier for you to pick up scrap and eventually get this triggered a bunch of times. Blobs are really nice because they deal a bunch of damage, but you're typically only triggering them a couple of times in a game. But usually that is because you kill the opponent, so not bad by any means, right? All the cards combo well with each other, but blue complements its own playstyle very well by extending the game, by healing up. So this is nice. It's solid. It's good. Again, you got to lean into buying blues. But a lot of people tend to play a heavy trade style, a heavy healing style. And this plays into the defensive nature of blue. I like it. It's a good card, solid card. I give it an 8. Nothing to write home about, but, it's fine. Sapphire City Base. This gets a 10 out of 10 for its name alone, right? Hey kids, where do you want to go? Sapphire City! You take the kids to Factory World and then put them to bed, and the adults are going to Sapphire City. 5 trade initially. Trade Federation base, blue base. 2 damage, 2 healing. Pay 1 less to acquire this card for each card you have in play, and it's a 5 HP outpost. I like this card if you can get it for cheap. 2 damage, 2 healing. It's good, and it's a nice repeating thing. 5 HP block is really nice. So essentially this is 2 damage, 7 healing, which would be the equivalent to like Reclamation Station or Reclamation Point. Yeah. It's 7 HP. It deals 2 damage. It's a red and green base, and it allies to scrap in hand or discard pile. So this is kind of like that. I like the additional healing a little bit better because a lot of times you put up the base, but then your own personal life total is still low. But 5 trade for this card, I think this is more of a 4-cost card. So if you don't get the discount on this card, I think it goes down a lot. So this is kind of a variable score. Like, if you get it for 3, for 2, it becomes really nice, right? But if you get it for 5, it's kind of So, as much as I love the name, I think this is like a 6 out of 10. I think this is actually the worst card we've seen so far, which is unfortunate because I do like it as a card, but it just doesn't do enough. It doesn't do enough for the cost. Spike Colony. Blob Base, 5 trade. Slam it down and deal 4 damage. 5 HP. Doesn't block. It's not an outpost. Pay 1 less to acquire this card for each blob you have in play. Ooh, this card is nice. Love it. Love it. Deals 4, heals 5. Fucking perfect. Oh, wonderful. Allies all the blobs. And then if you have blobs, it ties into an aggressive blob strategy. You potentially could get this really cheap for like, 4 or 3 trade. It's great. Solid card, really nice. Lot of HP. 4 is an inflection point. 5 takes a lot. You have to get a pretty big, punchy card. And it's not an outpost, so it can sit behind other outposts. Obviously, always good. And 4 damage, man. Nothing to snipe at. I think this is a really good, really solid card. It's a little worse than a couple of other 5-drop bases. Like, if you compare this to other 5-drop blob bases, you would want those. Right? Like, if you have to pay 5 for this, you're going to want something else. But if you can get this a little cheaper, or it's just out there and it's sort of the only base, or you're just looking to pick up more damage, this is a really good, really solid card. I give it an 8. Not bad at all. Freight Hauler, 5 trade, gives you 4 trade. Ooh, so kind of like a freighter, right? Freight Hauler. So gives you 4 trade. Combos to deal 4 damage. That's kind of nice. Double combos, put the next card you acquire this turn directly into your hand. What? If it double combos, it gives you the Factory World effect? That is super powerful. This card is excellent. It's an engine. And if you're building a blue deck, this card fucking goes off. Goes off. But again, you have to lean into the blue deck. So it's variable. I think just on its own, paying 5 to get 4 trade is actually kind of shitty. You shouldn't be paying more than 1 trade to get 1 trade for a card. And in fact, you'd want to get a bonus, right? Ideally, you want to pay like 2 to get 3 or 3 to get 4. You're paying 5 to get 4. That's not that good, right? But 4 trade in 1 card is really nice because then you can get the 8 drops. And because it costs 5, you can purchase it on your first hand. So there are benefits to this card, but I think the trade to trade that you get ratio is not very good. That being said, the effects on this card are fucking phenomenal if you can get them off. So I would say just on its own, without any blues, this card's kind of bad. I would give it like a 5, like not even a 6. I'd say it's actually kind of bad. But the instant you pick up 1 or 2 other blues, this card skyrockets. And if you can combo it, it's a 10 out of 10. So 5 out of 5, 10 out of 10 averages out to 7. So there you go. Sounds good. Trading Colony, 6 trade, and then it's a blob card. It gives you 2 trade. It allies to give you 4. It double allies to acquire a ship for free and put it on top of your deck. Another one of these cards where it's hard to evaluate, right? Like you need to have the requisite cards to go with it. So just on the surface, paying 6 trade to get a 5 HP base, not an outpost, and give you 2 trade, that's kind of shitty. That should be worth about 4, maybe 5. But comboing to get 4 damage, oh, now we're talking. Maybe you can, pair it with that colony card we had just before. Spike Colony, I think was the name. And deal 8 damage. It's kind of nice. Now we're talking. Acquire a ship for free and put it directly on top of your deck, right? That, if you recall, that's the blob carrier effect. Now, it takes 2 blobs to actually make it happen. But you combo this with blob carrier, ooh, baby, putting 2 solid ships on top of your deck. Command ship and dreadnought on top of your deck, very, very nice. But here's the thing, and again, you always got to think, sometimes I ally, sometimes I don't. And then less often than that, I will double ally, and then oftentimes I will not. So you really kind of want to weigh your judgment more on the most likely scenario, which is I will buy this and just get 2 trade out of it and 5 HP base. That's not that good. 6 is overcosted. If this had the ability to buy it cheaper, I think it'd be very good. But again, that'd be way too much text on 1 card, and they'd probably have to remove one of these things. So I'll be honest, while it's potentially really powerful, I don't think this card is that good. I give it a 6, maybe even a 5.5. Yeah, you know, the moon scenario when you get everything, this card is fantastic, but it's a lot harder to get than you think. Command Cruiser. Oh, baby! 6 trade, Star Empire card, 8 damage, ally to draw a card, double ally to draw another card? What? This card is ridiculous. Oh my god! First of all, 8 damage in one card is really hard to do, right? Your 7 drops and above typically do that, or your 6, your battle blobs can do that, right? But allying to draw a card and then allying to draw another card is ridiculous because there's so many yellow cards that just cantrip themselves, that just draw themselves. So like you play this and then you play another card that draws, then the allies that draw, and then the likelihood of you getting more yellows, and then it creates a cascade effect. And this card is excellent to cascade with over and over and over again, but then you also get 8 fucking damage out of it, and it's easy to make this card weightless. Remember, because you're playing yellows, and yellows often draw, the likelihood of you drawing into this card while you already have a yellow card out is really high. I think this card is fantastic. I think it's an easy snap up. This is a 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10. Wonderful card. Command Cruiser, favorite card so far. Battlestar. Star Empire Base, 6 trade, automatic 3 damage, allies deal 3, double allies, target opponent discards card, and it's a 5 outpost. Meh. It's okay. 6 is a lot. 6 is a lot to get 3 damage and a block for 5. 5? That's it? Why not 6? Feels overcosted. Yeah, it could potentially ally to deal 6 damage. It could potentially ally to get a lot of discards. And, like I was, just talking about before, yellows do combo really well with each other. But you're going to have to commit to a yellow deck. And even if you get everything, I don't know if this is worth 6. Like, okay, yeah, it is. It is if you get everything. I don't know. I just wish it did more on its own. It's just not a very good standalone card. This is a card where you're gonna have to get, other yellows with it. And who knows, man? I give this a 6. It's fine. It's fine, but I think it's a little overcosted. They could maybe knock a damage off of each one and make this a 5 cost card, and then it'd be perfect, right? Then it'd be a really good buy. Arcadia. 6 trade, machine cult base, scrap a card in your hand, allies to scrap a card in your discard pile, double allies to deal 6 damage. Ooh. Shit. So unlike the other card that we just saw, this card's actually very good. Here's why. It scraps in your hand automatically, right? And it's a 5 HP base. Now that in and of itself is undercosted, right? But when it combos, it scraps a card in your discard pile. So now you've got a hand scrap and a discard pile scrap. You've got potentially 2 scraps in one card. And because you're playing another red, that scraps as well. So potentially, playing 1 red card and this card, you're getting 3 scraps. And if you double ally, you get 6 damage, which is fantastic. That's a lot of damage. But again, because it's a double ally, we're not necessarily thinking about it that much. But here's the thing. Arcadia, because it's a scrapper, will make it easier to draw it again and again and again. Whereas, like the card right before this, had no card draw on it and only had a target discard. And yeah, it dealt 6 damage, but it dealt 6 damage over 2 combos. This will make your deck super efficient and will allow you to draw it again, which will allow you to draw the damage again. And it says scrap in hand as the first one. You always have a hand. You don't always have a discard pile. So this will always get you a scrap, assuming you choose to use it. I think this card is actually very good and is secretly a lot stronger than you might think. I give it a 9 out of 10. Alrighty. Let's check out the next card. The Scrap Factory. Ooh, a factory of scrap. 7 big ones. That's a lot. That's a lot. Red card, obviously. Scrap a card in your hand or discard pile. 7 HP Outpost. That's pretty good. Pay 1 less to acquire this card for each red card you have in play. So, if you did not get a discount at all, this is a glorified junkyard, right? A junkyard is scrap a hand and discard pile, and it's 5 HP Outpost. 7 HP Outpost is big. It's rare to find a card that has 7 damage on it. So it would require multiple cards to kill this card, which is good. Scrap a card in hand and discard pile, so you'll always have a scrap. That's pretty solid. It's a red base, which is good, and potentially could be really cheap. Here's the problem, though. By the time you get to a point to where this becomes 4 or 3 cost card, you don't really need it anymore. Then it just becomes, again, a glorified junkyard. And junkyard very often becomes kind of a useless card. It's weird to say that about a scrapper, but yeah, because it doesn't do any damage, it just kind of sits there and blocks. So I don't think this card is actually very good. Now, if you can get it down to 5 and buy it, all right, yeah. See, this is the problem, though, is you have to get it down to 5 to then start to make it a card that's actually worth paying the cost for it. So even with the discountability, I don't think this card is very good. It's fine. It's a 6, maybe even a 5.5. It's just, it doesn't do enough. Blob Builder. Wow, look at this card. 7 trade. And when you play it, it gives you 5 trade, and you may scrap any number of cards in the trade row, and then it allies to acquire a base for free and put it on top. Oh, top deck a base. That's kind of cool. Pay 1 less to acquire this card for each blob you have in play. Neat. Oh, shit. That's really good then. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Holy moly. That's actually really good. So it gives you 5 trade, right? That's nice. 5 trade is a lot. That's enough to get you almost any base you want. And then maybe you need a few more trade to get a bigger base. But it scraps cards in the trade row. So you can scrap every single ship and leave the bases that you potentially would want. Then you only need to combo 1 blob to put the base on top of your deck for free. So it's the blob carrier effect, but for bases. But because you can, play a couple of cheap blobs, it'd be really easy to go, 2 blobs that give you trade, discounts this down to 5, and then you just snap this up on turn 2 or 3. This is actually something that you could acquire pretty early in the game. Wow. I mean, it doesn't do any damage, but it is an engine. I wish it did some damage, but aside from that, I think this card's really good. I do like to play a base strategy too, so thumbs up. Yeah. 8.5? 8.5 sounds good. It's not quite a 9, but I think it's very good. War Mech. Machine called Ship. 8 trade. 10 damage. Put 2 bases from your discard pile on top of your deck. Ally to draw a card. What? Pay 1 less to acquire this card for each red card you have in play? What? That's insanity. Holy shit. Because here's the thing. You can play it, deal the 10 damage, put whichever base you want on top of your deck, up to 2 bases if you so choose. And then trigger the ally to draw the base that you just top decked. So not only are you dealing 10, you're also potentially getting to play a base from your discard pile again after it just got killed. And you notice in the picture, it's holding a brain world. So it could be a brain world. And you could get this for cheap too, maybe 6. Wow. 10 out of 10. This card is fucking fantastic. So good. Spoiler alert, we've played games with this card. I already know how good it is. It is a bomb. It's a bomb. 10 damage is ridiculous. All right, let's move on to the Voyager. Now we've got the triple cards. One trade, and it gives you 2 trade. It's blue. Combos blue to give you 2 damage. Combos double blue to give you 4. So, if you get all the combos out, it is a slightly worse cutter. That's fucking lame. Right? Like, if you get all the combos, it's a slightly worse cutter. It does less damage than a cutter. That is terrible. This card is hot garbage. Now, the reason why this card would be good, though, is if you got multiple Voyagers. Right? You notice it's a 1-cost card, so typically they have like 2 or 3 of them in a set. So, that's when this card becomes good. If you go Voyager, Voyager. Then you get 4 trade, 4 damage, and then you play 1 more blue, and then you get 8 heal. So, this card, obviously, because of the way that it allies, wants you to lean heavily into a blue deck. But if you're not leaning heavily into the blue and you just buy it, I mean, it's still 2 trade. It's 1 trade to get 2 trade. Can't beat that. Can't beat the price. So, it's still a good card. It's still a good card. But it has a really poor upside to it. So, I give it a 6. It's not terrible, but it's just really bad. Yeah, it's a 1-drop, so I guess it shouldn't be that strong, but like, even at its max, it's not as good as a 2-drop. Swarm Cell. Blob Base, 2 trade, 2 damage, allies to deal 2 more, and it's 3 HP base. Love it. Absolutely fucking love it. I think this card is ridiculously good. For a 2-drop, it's a 2-drop. The Spike Pod, I think, if I remember correctly. Is it Spike Pod? Spike Cluster? Spike Nest? Swarm Cluster. Is that what it is? I don't know. Whatever. It's a 2-drop. It deals 2 damage and allies to give you 1 trade. This card is way better than that card. Way better than that card. 2 damage to ally to deal 2 damage, and it's a 3 HP base. No. This card is so much better than that. This is really good. Being able to potentially deal 4 damage on a 2-cost base is so fucking good. That is ridiculous. I mean, it's like, 2 6-shooters. It's fucking awesome. Very simple, but I think vastly underrated this card will be. I give this a 9 out of 10. It is an excellent 2-drop. It's all the damage that you would want. Cargo Raptor. 2 trade, Star Empire ship. It gives you 3 trade, allies for 2, double allies, target opponent discards a card. Fuck yeah. It's a good card. Getting 3 trade, paying 2 to get 3. It's good value. It's good value. It's a yellow card. It's weighted. It does not scrap itself, so that's a little unfortunate. That was one of the things I really liked about Farm Ship is 3 trade, draw to, 3 trade to loot, to draw and discard. But then you could scrap it to deal 4 damage and get rid of it if you didn't need it anymore. This card, you can't get rid of it, but it plays into a yellow strategy really well. It's nice and cheap. And again, you pay 2 trade to get 3 trade. It's going to allow you to get a bomb on the next turn. This is a good card. Good card. I give it an 8. It's solid. It's a good buy. You'd be happy to have it in your deck. And again, you could always scrap it later. And it gives you a little extra damage, a little extra, plays into a yellow strategy. 5-card discard. It's going to be easier and easier to do. Let's move on to the Fusion Bot. 3 trade. Red ship. 5 damage. Nice. Allies to scrap a card in your hand or discard pile. Nice. Double allies to draw a card. Nice. Okay. So this is the second card we've seen that double allies to draw a card. So you see this in this set, right? It wants you to lean into single colors. 5 damage is fucking good. An ally to scrap a card in your hand or discard pile is very good. But again, it's got ally. Who knows if it allies? So Again, we're going to weigh our analysis of this card more towards its initial effects. And 5 damage for 3 trade. That's fine. It's good enough. It's a nice, cheap damage card. You could argue it's equivalent to like a destroyer bot, right? 5 damage that scraps in a discard pile. This could scrap in hand or discard pile and could draw a card. So, you know, the upside is there. But 5 damage on 3 trade, 5 damage, red card, good. Solid. Good enough. You know, I give it a 7, but with high upside. So it starts as a 7, could potentially be a 10 if you draw all the reds with it. So that's a good card, right? Pretty high floor, high ceiling. You know, that's nice. Arsenal. 5 trade, yellow Star Empire base, deals 2 damage, draw a card, then discard a card. Fuck yeah. 5 HP. Wow. Shit, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. Jamming terminal? Jamming station? Is 5 HP, 2 damage, target opponent discards a card. But that's a 6 HP base, whereas this is a 5 HP base. But the fact that you get the you know, the draw a card, discard a card is really big. That's really, really big. So this card is effectively weightless. Effectively weightless, right? Like I wouldn't consider it completely weightless, but that's big. That's big. Draw a card, discard a card, deal 2 damage, 5 HP. Strong. That's really, really strong. Maybe a little overcosted. I would like 4.5. I think is the right price for this, but since you can't do that, it's a 5. But that's really good. That's really good. The ability to draw a card first, then discard a card is really solid, right? It's not an orbital platform, right? It's not a captured outpost. You know, being able to draw a card, then discard a card, and deal 2 damage, and be yellow base, and potentially sit out there. Wonderful. Wonderful. Excellent card. 8 out of 10. I like it a lot. Moving on to the Naval Yard. 6 trade for a blue base. 3 trade or 4 heal. And it's a 6 butt outpost. Ooh. Yeah. Solid. Solid. Reminds me a little bit of the Acer 4 card. But that card could ally to give you a card draw, which I think I would like more. Here's my only problem. This card gives you trade. Awesome. It gives you 4 heal. I would have liked 5. I think 5 would have been better. But you're paying 6 to get it, which means you've already invested into a trade card. To then get what? Another trade card? I'd like something that does a little better. You know? But it's a 6 outpost. This is effectively healing you for 10. That's big. That's really big. And if you're playing a defensive strategy, this is an excellent defensive strategy card. So, my problems with it is, though, it's not proactive, right? And it's giving you trade, which you then have to spend, which you then have to get stuff. So, I don't really like that. But just from a pure defensive standpoint, I think it's an excellent card. I'm going to give it an 8, but it might be a little overcosted. Mech Fortress. 8 trade machine cult base card. Draw a card. You may scrap a card in your hand or discard pile. Allies to deal 5, and it's a 6 outpost. 6 HP outpost. Does that not feel like enough to anybody else? 1 card draw, 1 scrap, 6 HP base, 5 damage. Allies to deal 5 damage? Ugh. That seems kind of lame. Incinerator is better, because that gives you 2 scraps. Brain Rolled is better. That gives you 2 card draws and 2 scraps. And it's a 6 HP base. This card sucks. 8 trade? There's no way to make it cheaper either. This seems like the kind of card that would have the, you know, cheaper because you've played other colors, other cards of the same color thing on it, but it doesn't. Like, this is very slightly better than Machine Base, and Machine Base kind of sucks too. Yeah, this card sucks. This card sucks. I mean, it does a lot of good stuff. It does a lot of good stuff, but this should be a 7, not an 8. It is clearly overcosted. Lame. Lame. 5.5. 5.5. I don't like it. Warrior Pod. 2 trade. Blob Ship. 4 damage. Allies for 3. Pay 1 less to acquire this card for each blob you have in play. Good. Solid. Great. I love it. It's a ram that doesn't scrap, so it should cost 2 instead of 3. Yeah. Good, solid, strong damage card. Potentially 7. Works in a blob deck. Thumbs up. 8.5 out of 10. I love it. Corsair. 3 trade. Blue Trade Federation ship. Gets you 3 trade. Allies to deal 4. Pay 1 less to acquire this card for each card you have in play. Lame. Lame, lame, lame. It's a card that gives you trade and costs less, but it's a blue card. Blues typically have a lot of trade. You're not actually worried about trade. You're not worried about the cost of this card. Like, so what if you get it for 1 or for 2 or for 0? So what? I'm adding a card that is weighted. I'm adding a card that has to ally to give me damage. Yeah, it gives me 3 trade, but even if I get that at a discount, so what? I would have to buy a blue card, then play that blue card on the very next turn, to then get this Corsair, to then put it in my deck, to then potentially buy another card. You see how long this takes? You see how long this is going to be? This card is hot garbage. Hot garbage. Poop, poop, poop. I'm not saying you wouldn't buy it. 3 to get 3 is fine. It's not good, but it's just, it doesn't do anything. It's not helpful. It's just not a helpful card. This is a 4. Second and or first worst card I've seen so far. Operations Platform. 3 trade, red Machine Cult base, gives you 1 trade or 1 damage. Pay 1 less to acquire this card for each red you have in play, and it's a 4 HP outpost. A 4 HP outpost. Oh. That's not bad for 3. 1 trade, 1 damage. That's fine. Maybe you get this cheap, maybe you get this free. I'm more excited about bases that come cheap than I am about ships that come cheap, right? Because bases, are going to sit out there, they're going to absorb damage. Ships, they just, they're a one-time effect. The potential to get this effect again and again and again, it's really good. 1 trade, 1 damage, that's not a lot. But, you get this for 2. 2, it's a steal, right? Even if you get it for 3, it's still pretty good. Not bad. It's a little overcosted at 3, but it's very good value at 2 or at 1. Yeah, I like this card. Like, it's nothing special, but it's solid. It's a good addition to your deck. I give it a 7. Hellfire. Great name. 10 out of 10 for the name. 4 trade. Yellow Star Empire ship. 5 damage. Target opponent discards a card. Oh, really? Allies to draw a card, then discard a card. Oh, really? Pay 1 less to acquire this card for each yellow you have in play. Oh, really? Oh, this card is fantastic. Wow. 5 damage. Force your opponent to discard a card. For 4 trade, that's already good. Right? That is a gunship. That's already a gunship. That's already great. That's already solid. If you can get this for cheaper, for 3, for 2, oh, wow. Then it becomes really good. And since you're already trying to force your opponent to discard, you're already trying to draw and discard, this card fits into the yellow game plan perfectly. Perfectly. 5 damage, target opponent discard a card is already solid. Plenty of upside, plenty of opportunities to get this cheaper. Very, very, very nice card. 8.5 out of 10. Maybe even a 9. Snap it up where you can get it. Tanker Mech. 5 trade. Machine Cult Ship, red color. Gives you 4 trade. Allies to scrap a card in hand or discard pile. Scrap it to draw a card. Pay 1 less to acquire this card for each red card you have in play. That's pretty fucking good. Maybe you get this for 4, so then you're paying 4 to get 4, which is awesome, which would get you those brain worlds, right? It scraps to draw a card, which I love, because then you can buy that bomb and try to draw into that bomb a little faster. You might get a scrap a card in your hand or discard pile. That's really good, right? And then it's like mining mech. Is that the card? I don't know, whatever. The card that gives you 4 trade, allies to destroy a base, and scraps a card in hand or discard pile. Like, that's pretty good. My only problem with this card is the ally scrap. Right? That's where it's kind of lame. But if you can get it cheaper, it's a nice addition to your deck. And because it can scrap to draw a card, it's always potentially weightless. So, it's a good card. It's solid. I don't know. Again, it's not very offensive, so it doesn't necessarily do much, but pretty good. I like it. 7.5. Swarm Colony. Blob Base. 6 trade. Draw a card. Whoa. Allies to deal 4. 5 HP base. Pay 1 less to acquire this card for each blob you have in play. What? What? This card's ridiculous. So, already cycles itself. It's a base that cycles itself. That's really good. 1 less card. It gets cheaper, right? So potentially this is 5. Potentially this is 4. If you get a discount, that's excellent. Allies to deal 4. That's really good, right? But even if it never allied, it still draws a card. It still is 5 HP block, right? If you put an outpost in front of it, you could potentially be drawing a card for 2 turns, 3 turns, 4 turns. It does extra damage, and you could get it for cheap. And it allies really, really well with other blobs. It's fucking great, Again, this is another one of those, like, pretty high floor and really high ceiling cards. Thumbs up. Thumbs up. The ceiling's not that high, right? It's just a really good card. Even if you paid a full 6 for this, it's a good card. I give it 8.5 out of 10. The Armory. 7 trade. Star Empire base. 3 trade. Target opponent discards a card. Pay 1 less to acquire this card for each yellow card you have in play. And it is a 6 outpost base. Well, thank goodness it has that cheaper mechanic thing on it. Because this card is hot garbage. Hot garbage. 7 trade to get 3 trade and target opponent discards a card and a 6 HP base. That sucks. That's like a 5 cost card. And the thing is, it costs 7, but then it gives you trade later on. So what? I don't need trade. Once I have 7, I don't need extra trade. And this card is almost purely defensive. Yes, and it furthers a yellow discard strategy, which is nice. And yeah, you could get it cheaper, which is nice. But again, you can't always count on that. So you really want to evaluate your cards in terms of their raw, unadjusted cost. And 7 is just way too high. Way too high. You'd have to discount it twice to make it a pretty good card. Yeah, this card is bad. This card is bad. This is a 4. I think it's better than a couple of the other 4s, but it is definitely lower tier. Lunar Landing. 9? God damn. 9 cost Trade Federation base. For each blue card you have in play, gain 1 and draw a card. Whoa, what? Pay 1 less to acquire this card for each blue card you have in play. 5 HP base. Whoa, this card is fucking amazing. Oh my god. This card's incredible. So, think about it this way. You play a trade hauler and a freighter, and you get this card for free. And then you can buy this card. And then because you have 2 blues, those cards become card draw cards. So now your trade cards that would normally just bloat your deck don't bloat your deck anymore. This card effectively turns all your BS blue trade cards into card draw and into healing. Notice that it doesn't say after, it's not after this card has been played. It's for each blue card you have in play. So it's an aura effect. It's constantly happening. So when you play this, you get card draws for all the blues you already have. Then any blues that come behind it also trigger card draws. So every blue card in your deck becomes potentially a card that draws cards and heals for 1. Wow. That is an amazing card. And because it is in itself blue, it's going to get you a card draw. It's going to get you the healing. Oh my god. Holy shit. This card is fantastic. This card is an 11 out of 10. Even if you only have 1 blue card and you discount this down to 8, this card is fantastic. Holy shit. Wow. I wish I had a little more HP, but nah. This is the best card in the set. Best card in the set. 10 out of 10. 11 out of 10. Amazing, amazing card. And guess what? That's also the end of our card review. So guys, thank you so much. Thank you for being here for the high alert. Now, some of you may be asking, what the hell happened to the hero cards? I would say all of the hero cards are excellent cards. They're all 9s out of 10. They're just really good. They double ally. Sometimes they double ally twice. And they have really awesome effects that tie into the colors that you want. They all cost either 1 or 3. They're excellent cards. I highly recommend all the hero cards if you play with the heroes. But I'm not reviewing them because I'd give the same review to all of them. So, really good cards. Thank you for being here. Really appreciate it. Love you all. Enjoy playing out there in the stars, man.